Hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy. We are back once again with our weekly The Book of Boba Fett reviews. Tonight, not joined by a George. He is AWOL, but we are joined with Dave, obviously. No stranger to the channel and certainly not to Star Wars content. Thank you very much for jumping on with me tonight. We've chatted a little bit about this episode beforehand, but there's a lot to digest with this one, and there might be mixed opinions. It's an open conversation, everyone, so please do get your comments coming in. Every week, we love, having all the comments coming in, someone to respond to, and let us know your thoughts so far on the Book of Boba Fett, specifically today's episode, which was Chapter 6, From the Desert Comes a Stranger, and we will be talking about that stranger towards the end of the review. As I said, there's a lot to unpack, but how are you doing tonight? And your initial opinions on the episode, I guess.
Yeah, I do very well. Thank you very much, sir. It's I think I've got to literally come back to kind of what you said on the video last week, that I loved pretty much every second of this episode. Whether it was a Book of Boba Fett episode is to be questioned again, but I say I loved what I saw, so I really enjoyed it. I got a lot out of the episode. Just some of the things that we saw, some of the characters we saw, just made me happy and smiley. So yeah, a lot to discuss. I think there's some really interesting takes on what we're seeing over the last two episodes of this series.
Absolutely, and I mean, you've been commenting week to week. So what have your opinions of the series been so far? Before today's episode, do you think it's been a strong series? Do you think it's had its problems overall, or?
Yeah, because I love the early stuff, like the flashback things. I really enjoyed that whole catching up with Boba Fett and where they've got to. So yeah, I think it's been really interesting to see that, and it's taken a turn with the last episode with the Return of the Mandalorian, where it went off in a different direction than I thought it was going to go. Yes, we kind of got the hint he was coming. I think it was episode 4. We just got the theme playing us out. And you kind of go, all right, he's going to come back in. And I mean, this episode, I thought we were going to get the putting the band together episode, and that we would see Mandalorian, but we would come in. He said he was going off last episode to go see a little friend. I thought we wouldn't see that part of the journey. I just thought Mandalorian would then turn up later on this episode after they'd got the rest of whoever they needed together. I was proved very wrong by my thoughts, but yeah, it's I don't know if it's a strong series yet. I think it's going to be one that I need to see as a whole once it's all done, once the book has closed and the chapters are finished and all of that. But so it's going to be a really interesting finale, because there feels like there's a lot to do. Like, they're talking about all-out war with the Pikes, and that kind of is, they've set off one bomb so far and taken trains through the desert. So there seems to be a lot of like exposition to get to and stuff to happen before we get there, and not a lot of time to tell that story.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Yeah, I didn't quite realize how much is going to have to be done in that final episode, but you're absolutely right about the Pikes. I mean, I don't think they've been bigged up as a significant threat, really. We haven't really spent much time with them. We don't really know. Is they just like ferrying spies? Is it just money? Are the Hutts going to come back into it? Who knows? There's so many options. And now with the stranger in the desert who shows up today, even more questions. Before we get into the review, I am going to bring up some of you guys' comments. I'm going to start with the obvious one because it made both of us laugh. A comment from Martin. George, you're not looking yourself tonight. Well observed.
I've upped the handsome level on the channel. Just that's all I was here for.
Yeah. This is pure sex appeal tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Like, come on. We've got Carl as well, as always. He says, bet George is gutted he's missed this one. I'm sure George will probably give us, at the start of next week's episode for the finale, he'll kind of give us his initial opinions on this one. Dave, I may as well ask you now. George has probably already asked you. You're coming on for the finale, right? Like, it's going to be all three of us.
I will absolutely. If I'm invited, I will be here, because it's going to be. I think it's going to be good to talk about. Yeah,
definitely. We've got a comment from R as well. I actually agree with this one. Love the Wild West movie parallels. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Star Wars fundamentally back in 1977 is that beautiful blend between, Eastern culture, samurais, and, all those kind of movies, and Westerns. And every time I love me a good Western, all the tropes, the Mexican standoffs and the Ennio Morricone kind of music kicking in. Love it. Loved all that stuff. Got Elizabeth as well, who says, who knew we would see Grogu so soon? Yes, I was very surprised, absolutely astounded that we got all of this episode. And Carl, everything that has happened in the past 2 episodes, I really thought we'd get in season 3 of Mando. Real quick, Lucas is here as well. We've got a whole motley crew of people in tonight. Please do keep the comments coming as we get, because we're going to get into this episode now. There's a lot to talk about, but fundamentally, right there, that comment from Carl. If I'm going to give sort of my thoughts overall on everything, it's really frustrating storytelling, I think, so far with this series, and it's just laughable that, especially for the last 2 weeks, this is a show called The Book of Boba Fett, and we've got so little of Boba Fett. It's absolutely ridiculous. I think he gets one scene in this episode today. You know,
didn't speak a word. He was silent throughout. It was Fennec Shand who was doing all the talking. So even when Mandalorian, he just nodded his head, and it was like, so that's it. That's his arc of that episode as well. It was
and I mean,
very little
the show itself compared to Mandalorian, it's 1 episode shy of what the Mandalorian length were. You know, they were 8 episodes. This is 7, so already we're being given a series that's 1 episode shorter. And within that shorter series, you're basically removing 2 of the episodes out of it as well, and you've given those to Mando. Hopefully that's not the case for next week. Don't get me wrong, I love Mando. I love this episode. I loved last week's episode. All the content in it, I'm like, yes, give me more. I want to see more of Luke and Grogu and everything. But I want to see them in Mandalorian Season 3. I want to see Boba Fett develop his character more in a series called The Book of Boba Fett, and it's going to be a very similar response, I guess, to what my review was last week. It's just really frustrating. It looks like Disney are going with this, with the TV shows at least, and with this series. And we did see elements of this in season 2 of Mando as well, how they were using it as a springboard for all of these other projects that are going to show up down the line. It's very similar to kind of Marvel and the MCU, and how you can't really walk into any modern Marvel movie unless you've seen 20 plus films before it to get the broader sense of everything and how everything's connected. And I guess that's kind of a beautiful thing about Star Wars, is that it's a very big galaxy and you can have things connecting, but it is frustrating as a viewer. You know, you can't just go into Book of Boba Fett and watch that as a Boba Fett story. If you're just a Boba Fett fan, maybe you don't like Mandalorian, but you like the Boba Fett character. You're not really getting that because you're getting Mando. If you're a diehard Mandalorian fan and you're like, oh, I'm not really into this Book of Boba Fett thing 4 episodes in, well, guess what? You've just missed 2 absolutely crucial bits of information in 2 episodes that link to the Mandalorian character that you're not going to get in season 3. It's frustrating to say the least, I think. And now I guess that means, I mean, we would anyway, because we're Star Wars fans, we'll watch all of the shows when they come out. But for casual viewers, and I do genuinely believe that The Mandalorian did pick up a lot of new casual viewers to Star Wars. It was this, you know, brand new, biggest thing on Disney Plus and everything. I don't know. How do you feel about the fragmented storytelling? Because also setting up for Ahsoka as well with this, right? There's so many characters and shows down the line. It's getting a bit hard to keep track of it all, I think.
It is, and I think it has this thing where I don't know if this maybe... I think I saw on Twitter earlier somewhere put that maybe they should have been labeled as Mandalorian Book of Boba Fett, sort of a almost like a Mandalorian season 3. You can get Mandalorian at some point, but like as a bookmark to the Book of Boba Fett is your main bulk of the story that you're going to get. So Din Djarin was going to pop in at some point, and if it had been labeled sort of almost like a season, I think someone's put the comment season 2.5.
I'll just bring that up from Lucas right there. Yeah, absolutely. It does make you wonder, doesn't it, if the showrunners did kind of lose sight. Somewhere they lost focus on what they were making and kind of shot the bolt almost with Mando, perhaps.
Because of the way they do this, I don't know, because obviously Favreau writes the whole thing. So I think he's gone into this and written this story. And I think The Mandalorian was always going to be part of it, which is why I just think they should have maybe labeled this as Mandalorian Book of Boba Fett. So you had that going through without having to then... people going, oh, I'm not really into Boba Fett, and I'll jump out. If you'd labeled that Mandalorian Book of Boba Fett, I think you would have had people coming straight back. We hadn't had a series, it was the new series for the year, so it would left Mandalorian, would had a bit of time wait, so it would have been like the next series to kind of jump into, and I think would have held a lot more interesting because we're getting so many returning characters as well. I think we're going to talk about Cobb Vanth is back from Mandalorian, so we're getting a lot of sort of tellers. I mean, even the Jawas that you see, the Sandcrawler with the skull of the dragon on the front of the crate dragon on the front of it. I just think there's so much that was storytelling that we've had previously that you wouldn't expect to maybe be in the series that is there. So I think there is a lot of that where you're going like, oh, I didn't see that. Well, you're right, you've missed big bulks of story, but also now we've got Ahsoka in the mix, which again, it sounds, I'm trying not to be negative. I'm not negative. Again, I loved this episode and everything about it as well. But you've got this thing with Ahsoka and, spoiler alert, Luke as well, hanging out. But there's so much to tell of that story of Ahsoka, Luke meeting Ahsoka, the Padawan to his dad. Like that's to me is a massive part of the story. I would like to see how that went down and what she told him about Anakin. I think there's so much story behind that. It's just disappointing that it was kind of like one line about, oh, you just like your father, and that was it. And it's like, oh, I need so much more than that, please.
Yeah, no, and this is what's quite frustrating about this show, not just for that, but other side characters. That it seems like there is so much that you could delve into, and real meat and storytelling and good character moments. And don't get me wrong, I got a smile on my face when she mentioned Anakin, like, oh, you just like your father. That's really good stuff, but you could develop that so much more. And I think, going into this series, I don't want to be too negative on it, but it does have its problems, and its problems with all the Boba Fett stuff. Unfortunately, the Mando stuff's great, just really out of place. But when we went into this, we all were hypothesizing it's going to be like Game of Thrones, it's going to be like Godfather, it's going to be like this and that, this crime and mob thing, and we hadn't really seen that side of Star Wars all that much, and that would have been interesting to me. Like, dare I say, Christ, I want more politics now in my Star Wars films. I've done a 180 from many, many years ago now. But that stuff would have been so interesting to me. The Twi'lek lady in the bar who's kind of managing this club, and the way she carries herself, and she's almost regal, but she's doing all these dodgy dealings on the side. That's a character I wanted to know so much more about. And we've kind of done away with all of that. And it feels like the focus of this show has kind of been all over the place. And I know it's a completely different medium. TV is very different to film. But the beautiful thing about Star Wars was that you could just fundamentally how it's structured and what it's based on, like the old serials that George Lucas grew up with, you could walk into that. Hell, people walked into it in 1977 unknowing that was going to be episode 4. You're randomly kind of plonked into this action, but you can pick it up as you go along. But where you mentioned there, well, those Jawas, you have to have seen Mando to understand that. Cobb Vanth, who's this character if I'm just watching Book of Boba Fett? There's no introduction. Oh, well, he was in episode 1, season 2 of Mando. So there's more of an expectation now from the audience with this TV realm. And not just that as well, but the animated world now as well. I don't want to jump too far with like Cad Bane, because we're going to talk more about him later, but if you haven't seen Clone Wars, or, if you haven't seen Rebels with some of the stuff, you're going to be so lost. That moment's built up so massively at the end based on you knowing who that character is. And if you don't, well, tough, because we're probably not going to give you an explanation as to who he is. You just, there's that expectation there. So we're fine because we keep up to date with this stuff for the most part. I know I haven't seen all of Clone Wars and Rebels, but I know some of the stuff going on in there. But yeah, it's very different, and I don't know if I like it or not. As I say, it is the Marvel formula that they have now brought to these shows, and I think it's either I think it will get worse the more spin-offs we get, the more shows that we get, and the more Star Wars content we get.
And I think it wouldn't be as bad if they weren't so intertwined with each other as stories. I think if you got 4 or 5, like a Boba Fett, you've got a Mandalorian, but the fact they do intertwine with each other in this massive universe where everybody meets, that it would be really okay. Like, I can jump into the series. This series is going to be about that, and it's going to be about the gangsters and things like that, and watch that. And I don't need to think about my Mandalorian story and Grogu and Luke. I'll see that when Mandalorian comes out again, or Ahsoka. I'll see that when the Ahsoka series comes out, and maybe she'll come back in Mandalorian because I've already seen her in that previously. I just think when it's so tied in together, you're right, it does get difficult. You can get bogged down with it, I think, a little bit. And that's, I mean, certainly I'm their target audience. This is my bread and butter. I love being in this world. So that's really fine. But I think it can be daunting when there's so much storytelling intertwining on screen for you to then try and keep up with.
Yeah, no, totally. Sorry, I was Google imaging something right there, because we're going to be talking about Cobb Vanth and the Pikes for a second, and I was racking my brain. I was like, the Pikes really remind me of someone visually, And I was trying to place it. And have you ever seen I think he's a reviewer on YouTube called Doomcock. Have you ever seen him? He wears
I
a
have
helmet
not.
the whole
I'd be
time.
scared to Google his name.
It's fine. It's a safe Google search. Don't get me wrong. I didn't act in like revulsion or anything that I saw. It's either a mix of that or Mr. Roboto, the Styx album, the song. You know, the robot in that. I don't know. I'm trying to place it, but yeah, this is a series with a lot of problem. It's just I would have loved to have been in that boardroom meeting where they're coming up with the structure of this show. And just it feels like a lot of ideas being thrown in, actually, with the Mandalorian episodes. And I think next week we will get more of an ensemble, Avengers Assemble kind of thing. I expect that's how it's going to go. Would it have been out of the question to sort of release these 2 Mandalorian episodes as, how Doctor Who has like 1 to 2 or 3 specials throughout the year before, like a major series? Could they have done that? Could they have just been like, oh, Disney Plus this week, and 2 new episodes of Mandalorian to keep you tidied over? I think that might have been
like a special,
it separate. Yeah. I'm not sure, but what did you think seeing Timothy Oliphant again then? So Cobb Vanth, he's now the sheriff of the town, Freetown as they now call it, I believe.
Freetown, yeah.
Pikes and Spice and Dune is still fresh in my mind, and I keep thinking of Dune every single time they talk about Spice. Do you think it really has much impact, the storyline? It's just they're kind of fronting Spice, and there's bigger players behind the scenes, bigger things going on.
It's nice to see Timothy Oliphant again. I thought he always looks great, handsome man on screen again, and it was nice for him to kind of kind of sets you up for what you're going to get later when that stranger comes out of the desert, and they have the standoff that you're going to get this fast shooter at the start, and I think they maybe need to show that he had that in his literally in his holster, that he is a fast shot, a crack shot, that he took 3 pikes out of the 4 very quickly before they even got 1 shot off at him. So I think it was kind of done for that. But I do like the character again because I'd seen The Mandalorian season 2 episode 1 of the best ones in my opinion that we got as well. I think his character is well versed in that. We knew he was the sheriff from that as well. So they did put little drips and drabs in to kind of build the character. I'm the sheriff here. He kind of told you what he was. So they give that, and it's nice that he came back, and I really enjoyed his character in Mandalorian. So it was nice to see him again. And I like this take on, once he took the pikes out, that he got that spice, which they said was worth more than his whole town. And he just kicked it over at the end. It wasn't what they were after. He just wants Freetown to be Freetown. He's got those people that he's looking after, and it doesn't really care as long as they're left alone to get on with their business. It wasn't about the money they could earn from that spice anymore, which I thought was a nice touch to kind of build up that he's then going to be dragged into this kicking and screaming at the end of the series. Maybe not him so much, but limping, maybe.
And I like how he says that, we're square kind of thing, like we're done. But then he comes around to it, and that next episode is going to be carnage. It's just going to be Boba Fett. God forbid the mods are going to do something as well. Maybe they'll have another really slow chase throughout the city. Who knows? And then, you're going to have Cobb Vanth doing all that stuff. See, I don't know much about Cobb Vanth, like the history of the character. I'd never read. I think he was in the books, wasn't he? Was it Aftermath?
In the Aftermath, or I think he was in those. Obviously, they've changed his. They've kind of they've made these books like these are canon books, and then they kind of get we actually want this in the live action now, so make changes to the story that they told in these books. I think I'm not a reader of the books. I'm more of the visual medium, but I think that's kind of what they're doing now. They're picking what they want out of the Legends series and even the new books in canon. Like, that's his kind of story, so we'll put him in there. But I don't think it's the exact story of him. But I don't mind. It's say if you're not massively in the books, for me, the films and the TV shows are what are the canon to what the comic books and the books are all still just they're out there, and people get a lot of joy from them, but for me, that's just not. They'd be picked at whenever they need something for a character or things like that. I mean, the Wookiee, I remember his name, Black
Chrysanthemum, I think his name is.
Yes, Chrysanthemum. Thank you. Yeah. So it's nice that they pick these characters out because they've been in the comics and they go, oh, we'll have him. He's really good for this. He would work in this. But so that's kind of a tangent there. But so it's really nice to see Oliphant back as Cobb Vanth.
Yeah, absolutely. And Carl is one of the book readers here. Apparently, I didn't know this. Freetown is the name the town was given in the
Oh, cool.
books. So it's cool that they've referenced it that way. Yeah, all the Western vibes you mentioned, like the gunslinging is the fastest hand in the West, but I shoot with this hand.
Exactly.
Just yeah, as a reference out there for anyone who knows that. Yeah, so it's cool seeing him back. I love the Western vibes too that it brings. I guess we need to talk about sort of like the real meat of this episode, and there's a lot to dissect. There's a lot to talk about, so this is going to be probably the bulk of this review. I've literally just got a heading here that says Mando and Luke and Grogu, and also Ahsoka is there. Yeah, I mean, it was incredible seeing them again, and it is unfortunately to the detriment of the show. And I'm not going to harp on this too much because I'll do that for when we have our tie up next week probably, and we get the whole series presented. But the amount of joy that I was filled with today watching this episode, and last week seeing Mando back, seeing Grogu again, like I've got my little plushie up there, and I was just like, oh, I've got my little iPhone phone holder right here I got for my birth. Like he's everywhere. He's everywhere. He's never left me. And to see him again today filled me with so much joy. Not just that, but seeing Luke again, I will never forget that moment at the end of season 2 and what I felt in that first viewing. God, I was so happy. And I think every Star Wars fan out there, for the most part, had a positive reaction to it. I'm sure some had a negative reaction. People always do, but I didn't that day. And I'm usually the person that has all the negative reactions to everything, especially modern Star Wars. And I was sort of watching today's episode, and usually I watch something in utter silence. I could love it. It could be the greatest thing I've ever seen, but I'll usually just watch it, and watch it in quiet. But I was doing this. I was going, oh my God, it's Luke Skywalker. It's Luke. Luke is here. Like, what? This is mad. Like, we're getting new Luke Skywalker content. And as everyone's commented as well, they've come leaps and bounds with the deepfake technology on Luke this season. And I really wish that they'd go back and patch season 2 or get whoever they've worked on it now for this to go back and sort of touch up that, because on few more viewings of that stuff in season 2 it does look incredibly ropey, but I appreciated what they were trying to do with it. But this, they've nailed it. It's never there's still a little bit of uncanny valley there, and I think that's always going to be the way because the human eye is just so good. But my God, if you put a side-by-side comparison of what it was like in season 2 to this, it's incredible, to the point where I was like, I could go for a Luke Skywalker series. I would be quite happy. So, but because I'm having all of these overwhelming, emotions at seeing these characters, and I'm genuinely invested in the story and curious, and it feels like it's expanding the universe and the world and the lore and the story that I'm actually genuinely engaged in, it does make all of the Boba Fett stuff just pale all the more in comparison, because there are no characters in that side of the story that I have even remotely the same investment in or the same curiosity in. Now, granted, you could probably say that with Mando and Grogu and co, we've had 2 seasons, and with Boba Fett, we've only had, a few episodes, but that's a fault on the show. I even think by this point in Mandalorian season 1, I was more invested in the character of Mando and Grogu by this point, even going back to just when it was season 1, a couple of episodes in. It's just really... The comparison there is stark, I think, when you see this storyline and the reaction that people have had to it as well. I've seen a lot of people mention how much they've really enjoyed the last 2. We even had a comment earlier, forgive me, I can't find it now, saying the best episodes of the Book of Boba Fett have been ones that haven't included him. So that's a problem. But also, oh God, it was just so great seeing all of the characters again today. It really was. And R2D2 as well, throw him in there too. Why not?
I think it's hard because we're obviously ingratiated with these characters that we've grown up with so much. And yes, Boba Fett has his fans, his diehard fans as well, who love them some Fett. But in the time that we've really had him, he's had a few scenes in Empire Strikes Back. He was in that tiny bit of Return the Jedi. And then we've seen him in the series. We've had 2 seasons of Mandalorian, which the runtime alone in the time we've spent now with the character gives you that more developed feeling, I think, for him, and especially for Grogu, and it's a Yoda character, and that we've got then links to the Force and things like that, which is what kind of hooked us into Star Wars in the first place, probably for a lot of people. And I just think that's tough for Boba Fett to kind of follow into. He's a cult character, yes, absolutely, but he doesn't. I don't think he fulfills, certainly for myself, doesn't fulfill me in the same way that stories of the Force and this learning, and especially like Luke and R2 and that the things that make my heart just sing when I see Star Wars, that, like you say, made you put your hands, it looked like a real YouTuber, like going, look, oh my God. And, you know what I mean? Thumbnail stuff like that. It would have been, is literally what we should have had for today. But so yeah, I think it is tough for Boba Fett to kind of capture that same feeling for people. But I mean, the bulk of this story was where it was at, and I want to say, yeah, the deepfake stuff is incredible. I think they hired someone who actually did the deepfake stuff, who changed stuff. Said, look, I can do this better than you. And they hired him to ILM.
Oh, is that the Corridor crew on YouTube? I think
yeah. someone I know someone who did it, but they got, I don't know what his name is, but I know he got hired by ILM after that to work on deepfake stuff. So they've come on so far. I think we were talking just before we came on. The voice stuff still isn't quite working for me. Just the tone of voice, because they're just digitally taking the voice clips and building the words with that, whatever system it is they do it with. Some of the inflections and the way he says stuff doesn't quite read us. Sometimes like, oh, that's a bit harsh, Luke. All right, just come on. I think it's just because they can't build that exactly the way they need to for it to sound, but it'll get there. It's not bad for a new sort of technology. It's gonna be scary when they can literally put a character on there who has a face of someone you saw 30 years ago looking like that and has the voice exactly like that as well. It's going to be, what movie can't you do? What series can't you do? What people can't you follow? It's going to be crazy, but really, really good. And I loved seeing Mando landing. I loved seeing R2 was joyful, and that he then made him sit with all these ant creatures wandering around building the temples, or almost, that's literally where Ben was sleeping, right, when Luke pulled it down. That's totally that thing they were building.
Yeah, I wondered that too, because they look so much like... It's the difference. So when I watched The Last Jedi, I always thought that flashback took place on the same island, but then I thought, well, it won't be, because Luke went to that island, left a map and everything, but it does look very similar in terms of, I guess that's just how old school Jedi built their training huts, I guess. But yeah, those like ant robots, I guess, like this colony of robots building this thing, it was very interesting to see. And I will actually say that's probably, to this show's credit, my one big takeaway that I've really enjoyed across all the episodes so far is the new wonderful droids that they've brought to this series, showing us new stuff. A lot of them have been crazy and wacky, and I love them because of that. There's the drummer robot, there's the chef robot, there's Matt Berry's character, I know, was obviously the one from Return of the Jedi. There was the crazy one on the train, like the train conductor kind of robot, and now these ant ones as well. When I first saw them, I did think, and this is one of the only shreds of expanded universe that I know, there was an alien race that was native to Alderaan called the Killik, which were these like locust-like creatures that
all right, nerd.
were like force sensitive or something. Right? This is and like I think they could be manipulated through the Force to build stuff. And I thought, okay, is that meant to be those? But I mean, these are just straight up robots. I don't know where Luke got these. That maybe that's a graphic novel, a comic book that's just dying to be released at some point to see how Luke, maybe he made them all. I don't know. It was something different. It was something new that I hadn't seen, and it's just making me very worried. Now I'm like, Mando, please take Grogu away, because we know the fate of all of Luke's students come episode 8. If indeed this is leading into episode 7 and 8, which I guess at this point it's kind of beholden to that it has to. But we've got a question here from Lucas. Opinions on this. Whilst watching this episode, I was thinking that this episode would have been the perfect second film in the sequel trilogy following Luke building a new Jedi Order. Thoughts? I agree. Unfortunately, 30 years is a very, very long time between films to wait to do a sequel trilogy. So I don't think you could have old man Luke training a new era of Jedi, because why would he have left it for 30 years? He would have got on it straight away. So what I kind of want is, I want more stories like this now that we have the technology and it's getting better. And I do agree with you, Dave. Like, if they do use a voice algorithm, you can't capture the subtleties or nuances in a real human performance. I definitely agree with that, and I hope it's a fascinating technology to see the progression of, though. Seeing in the early days when you had Tron Legacy, I guess you could even say to some extent Oliver Reed in Gladiator, kind of in some respects as well, and maybe it was even done before then as well. But it is getting so good. But yeah, the voice is, I don't know if Mark Hamill was on hand and did some lines. I didn't know if they'd like altered the pitch or did something with current day Mark Hamill. I don't know how they did it, but it's getting there to the point where I'm like, I could go for a young Han, Leia, and Luke series. Like, let's get a Thrawn trilogy going of some kind. I think you could do it, but then you have the question: is it right to do that? Is it morally right to do that? But I mean, I guess they've kind of already done it with Leia, with stuff that they did in Rogue One and with Episode 9. You could maybe say that they were kind of closing the chapter on that because they needed to kind of finish that trilogy off. But I don't know. I mean, they did it with Peter Cushing as well. So if it goes for that, I think it depends on the actor, doesn't it? And if they sign off, and the family as well, because it must be a very surreal experience to see stuff like that, I imagine, as well.
Yeah, it's a strange one that you think we could do that. I don't think they have a problem doing that. And I think obviously now if they went back and did Rogue One and they did, it was all in Rogue One, Cushing and Leia, I think it would be a much better look as well about it as well. I think it comes sometimes to a moral question of whether you should do that and put
done it in Ghostbusters as well. Obviously, you were on the review for that as well with the ending to Ghostbusters Afterlife. So more films are doing this now, and we saw how good that looked as well at the end of that film.
It did look amazing. I just think it's so good. There's things coming out, and the technology is getting stronger and stronger. And I think we're only at the start as well, which is really kind of frightening about it. Like this is early days. Like Lucasfilm's always done. They've up these technologies and brought them out into film. Like you think like the volume, and now this bringing in full-on face replacements and deepfake into full-on TV shows, which is probably a first. I can't think of it being done another time for another series where they've literally done that to that point, because it was excellent.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm sorry, I was just looking at a question here. We've got some very cryptic questions coming in as well. So I guess talking about the flashback now, because that was a massive moment right there. Going back to the good old Jedi Temple when everyone's getting massacred by the 501st. It's a scene that is set up so well in Episode 3. One of my favorite shots out of all the Star Wars films, and the music combination as well, is Anakin marching up those steps with the 501st behind him, marching into the Jedi Temple, and then we don't really get to see all that much. So every shred, like every scene that we get to see during this carnage in the Jedi Temple was great to see. And in season 2 of Mando, we got told that he was present during the Jedi Purge. We finally got to see a glimpse of this. Now, you've got a theory behind this, because you think that this is definitely going to be a flashback that we revisit at some point, whether it be next episode or probably Mandalorian season 3. Because with this one, they're teasing an origin of the Yoda species and the Yoda homeworld, and we can talk about that in a second. But who do we think saved Baby Yoda? I love how we're still referring him to as Baby Yoda as well. I'm guilty of that. Who do we think saved Baby Yoda, Grogu, from Order 66? Do you have any thoughts right now? Do you think it'll be a new character, or do you think it's going to be a character that we know and love?
It's a tough one, because we kind of know the placement of most characters at that point while that was happening. So we've kind of got an idea of where each and every person is. Like we know Anakin's there, but Obi-Wan's up with Padme crying about babies and things in her room. But I don't know. I mean, the scene itself was a surprise. I didn't know when he said, let's have a look at your backstory and like your history. I thought we were going to see maybe a planet where we might see other of their species hanging around. I did not expect the flash of Order 66 Temple massacre. And I was sitting to you before we came on. I don't know if they were guys in suits or they were CGI clone troopers, because that armor was never made for Episode 3. They were always just CG. And at this point, I can't tell. And I don't know if that's a bad thing or a good thing, but I don't know. But it was wonderful, absolutely wonderful to see. The only thing that would have been lovely, they're shooting Kenobi now. They could have put Anakin just in the back in the background with his lightsaber swinging as well. Didn't need to have a close up, just that he was there at this point. And yeah, I think we're going to see more because they were chasing down Grogu right at the end of that flashback. They spotted him, they were heading for him, and then it came out. So they can't just leave it at that. We need to see who grabs him. I don't know who would take him. I thought for a minute it might be Kanan, but he's off. We've got a Bad Batch. We know where he is, so he's off with the Bad Batch on another planet doing battles there. So it is going to be really, really tough to know who's going to take. They're going to build a story out of whoever picks him up and to why they picked him up. And I don't know. I'm very intrigued though.
Yeah, it's fascinating to think about. I'm trying to rack my brain, and I physically can't think of any other Jedi present. I was actually wondering. I was kind of looking at the Jedi in this scene that we see, because we see 3 of them. And oh god, what's the name of he's in the video game for episode 3. I think he was one of like the swordsman or the stunt guys who worked on
Nick
the film.
Gillard.
Yeah, I'm forgetting the character's name, but I think Anakin killed. I think you see on the hologram in episode 3 that he killed him, and he's like fighting some of the students as well. So I guess there were just 3 random Jedi, but yeah, I couldn't tell if the suits were CGI or not. They looked great. I think because there was like a weird haze around the image as well, that kind of obscured a lot of it. But I just loved seeing how brutal the 501st were. You know, they shoot them dead, and then they're just like shooting the corpses just to make doubly sure that they've killed them, which was really, really harsh and brutal. And some of my favorite stuff, actually, even thinking back to Mandalorian, has been the flashback sequences. I loved when we saw when he was a foundling, and you know, the super battle droids again, where the droids are just laying waste to, you know, Mando's hometown and everything. So I love seeing that. I'd love to see them go back to it at some point. I forgot to mention one of my favorite things in the episode, and it was kind of dumb and cute and just everything at the same time. When Luke's walking alongside Baby Yoda and he's using the Force to kind of lift him to make him walk. Well, I guess there's no hover chair around, is there? Like Yoda had to keep up with him. So you've got, I don't know, it was just, every time it kept happening, it just made me laugh, but it was kind of adorable at the same time. So I didn't have a problem with it. Should we talk about like the Force jumping as well? Because we were mentioning about, you know, they've got to kind of link it to the Yoda that we see in the prequels. Now, you know, limitations of 1980, 1983, Puppet Yoda. You're not going to have, even Last Jedi, Force Ghost Yoda, you're not going to have him leapfrogging and jumping about. That was the miracles of early CGI in the 2000s. Anything's possible, so let's have Yoda whip out a laser sword and fight. And we see the elements of this, so I don't know if it's because I've found acceptance with the prequels now that any kind of link to it, it's kind of making it feel more in place in the universe, that is a thing that they can naturally do. I don't know if that's something that's native to the Yoda species, or if that is just them using the Force to help them do that. But yeah, there's a lot of references to, you know, potential origin world, I guess, of Grogu at this point and the Yoda species, because that has been one of the biggest question marks in Star Wars so far, is that, you know, every character dictionary I had as a kid, everything, it was always species unknown, homeworld unknown, and I kind of love that about it. So, you know, if we do get something in Mandalorian season 3, or God forbid another spin-off where we actually get that, it's cool, because it's, you know, it's showing us something new, and I'm craving new stuff from this world and from, you know, Disney Star Wars. But also I think it does take away the mystery of the character a little bit and that species. I am wondering if at this point, if we're going to get almost like a Kung Fu Panda 3 type thing, where there's like a safe haven of Yodas out there somewhere in a little jungle tropical planet, a little rainforest planet out there. And we're going to see a lot more Yodas. They bring up the question of how Yoda talked as well, spoke backwards. Is that something that's native to that alien species? Because if Grogu's being brought up alongside Mando and alongside Luke, who speak basic and normally, surely he'd grow up speaking in a normal way. So a lot of questions, and I am wondering if these are all elements from, because wasn't there rumors of like a Yoda origin film or a Yoda spin-off film?
When they were starting with loads of different ideas, hadn't they? Once they kind of got through, we've got Solo coming, we've got this coming, we've got this story coming, and I think they had a full backlog of what they were going to show us. And I do recall that was one of the ideas, that was going to be a story that we'd see. I do think we'll get told. I think the Grogu stuff was amazing. I like Luke trying to tell him can you show us how you jump? And he literally jumps about an inch off the floor.
Yeah.
And Luke just looks like, oh, no, that's not how you do it. Jump properly. Come on. Like, use the force as you're doing it. And then obviously we've got the training montage of Empire Strikes Back, jumping through and doing a flip through the jungle because it had to, in the blue rucksack that looked like the one that came with the toy. Yeah.
Luke's training really sucks. Like, surely there's more to it than that. Like, come on.
No one's learning
I can
anything.
see why they all got murdered now when Kylo Ren actually like ignited a lightsaber. None of them know how to use the damn thing. They're just jumping and doing backflips and climbing up trees. Like,
yeah, if you can climb a tree with your hands, you're absolutely fine for the
Jedi
circus
Master.
or Jedi school, whichever you want to do. So it's just, I mean, it's great. I love the Grogu stuff. It was really nice to be back with the character. The training remote stuff where he was actually, first when he got blasted by it, which was really funny. Got shot by it. And then when he destroyed it at the end and threw it in the water, I thought it was a really nice touch. And it kind of then led to that Ahsoka moment where he was like, I don't know if you want to stay. And Ahsoka's like, just like your father. And that's a lovely line, but not enough story for me of these two meeting. But yeah, the Grogu stuff was just wonderful to be back with.
Yeah, no, totally. And yeah, it is a missed opportunity with the Ahsoka thing. Hopefully, in the Ahsoka series, we get a lot more Anakin stuff, and I'm really hoping we get some in Kenobi as well. We get to see more of, Anakin in his prime, maybe some Clone Wars flashbacks as well, live action ones. That's what me and George keep hoping for, and I'm sure we'll get some stuff. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, so Luke's training, backflips aside, like the actual Jedi doctrine, I guess it's all he knows at this point, because obviously by the time we get to episode 8, he's kind of turned his back on everything and he's kind of deconstructing the Jedi and how flawed they are. But I do kind of like this, however, the last few years, and I don't think this was intentional by George Lucas, not to the degree that it's got to now. I think it was just kind of a little bit of ham-fisted writing that the Jedi were really incompetent back in the prequels. I don't think he intended that, maybe not to the degree, but I think, with the Clone Wars, Rebels, even the sequel trilogy in many ways as well, certainly Last Jedi, it has kind of poked holes in the whole Jedi doctrine. And I was kind of seeing that today. Like, I know he's 50 years old, 50 plus years old, but he's still a toddler based on Yoda species. And he's saying like, oh no, Mando, you can't see him because it will distract him from his training too much. But he still offered him like the trinket. So if they didn't want to bring attachment into it, why would he still tempt him with the Chama vessel? I guess it's the right thing to do because he's giving Grogu a choice, and it has to be his choice fundamentally. But yeah, it is kind of bad when he's like a baby and it's like no attachment, no love, no nothing. And I thought, Luke, have you not learned from this? You've got has he found the sacred Jedi texts yet? I don't think he has. Maybe he hasn't got to the temple, but he knows what happened to his father. Clearly, he had to have like conversed with Force Ghost Anakin at some point. I'm still bummed out that we haven't seen that. That's a scene like just waiting to happen right there. But knowing that the lack of attachment is one of the chief among them, the reasons why Anakin fell to the dark side and massacred half the galaxy, basically wiped out the Jedi almost single-handedly. And it's weird that Luke isn't trying to adapt that or see the shortcomings of that doctrine, or even making his own teachings and his own doctrine. So I don't know. What do you think about that? Obviously, there's still room to grow with Luke. He still feels very green in terms of teaching people at this point, I think.
I think you've literally just nailed it with that. Like, he is still brand new to this. He's still in that. This is his first student that he's taken on in all this time. When it's is it always 4? Is it 5 years since Return of the Jedi? Maybe 6
5,
now. By the time
I think, yeah, probably 6.
So we're kind of at that point where he's just now deciding to start a school. So he's probably got himself to where he needs to be at the level to be the Jedi he wants to be. But as a teacher, yeah, you're right. That's maybe why Ahsoka is there as sort of a guide for him, to kind of give him some lessons that she would have gotten from actual being a Padawan, and imparting that onto him. So I think it's part of the story that we're not getting, is what she's helping out Luke do. But I think, yeah, it's still early days. I think the offering to Grogu, especially when Luke said the line that, look, a lifetime to you is very short for like the people you'll meet. So like, it means Mandalorian is going to be their lifetime's very short in terms of your lifetime. Like, you're going to live for hundreds and hundreds of years, where these guys have got a normal life to live. So I think it was nice when they did it. I think obviously he's going to choose the Mandalorian armor, even though Yoda's collectible lightsaber is lovely. And he's not going to choose that. We're going to see him pop up, I've got no doubt, in the next episode. Somehow winning the war for them. The fight. Grogu takes them all down. But yeah, so you're right. It does feel like Luke isn't quite there. Maybe not quite ready to be teaching a lot of students yet. He's not. He's a new teacher. He's just finished university. He's just about to start in his first class, and they're really not quite ready for him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, it is. I mean, his training hut was still being built when he took on his first student. So yeah, it's all very new, but I have to assume that, Obi-Wan and Anakin and Yoda have passed on some wisdom. That's weird though, actually. He's talking like, oh, I knew someone similar to you. It's like, well, Force Ghost Yoda can pop up at any time and just be like, hello, actually, yeah. Like just appear.
He saw them at the end of Jedi, yeah. So it's not like they've never appeared to him. So yeah, you would have thought at some point they would have gone, it's not probably the way to teach that kid. But who knows, we might get something a bit later down the line. But it does seem weird, actually, the lack of knowledge you would gain from Force Ghosts. But again, we've got stories to be filled in, I guess, of what goes on.
And I guess they work in mysterious ways. They arrive precisely when they mean to. I've had really nerdy arguments with friends of mine saying like, well, why don't the Force Ghosts just show up here and do this? I know that Obi-Wan says I cannot interfere in Empire Strikes. Is it Empire? Yeah, Empire Strikes Back, isn't it? But it's like, oh well, if they're on a planet with not much life and it's quite barren and there's not much Force energy there, they can't appear. But that's why he appeared faded on Hoth when he says you must go to the Dagobah system. Well, there's no excuse on this planet because this has the most lush, green, beautiful planet you've ever seen, teeming with life. So yeah, Force Ghost Yoda, what's your excuse? Did you oversleep that day? Like, appear before Baby Yoda and just tell him where you came from. Tell us where you came from.
That's all it needs. One scene.
Yeah,
done.
Just going back through some of the comments here, Carl mentions when Luke said, will I see you again? I'm assuming this is to Ahsoka. It really reminded me of Anakin saying goodbye to his mother in Phantom Menace. That's a really good catch, actually. I didn't even think of that. Going back to the clones, we've got some clones appreciation right here. Love it. Lucas says, I loved seeing the clones against the Jedi again. I've always said I prefer the original trilogy films, but I prefer the prequel era of Star Wars due to clones redeeming it. So this scene I loved. I'm sure we'll see more of them along the line. I guess we can talk about the final choice then that is presented to Grogu. So somehow Luke has Yoda's lightsaber. And as soon as that was presented, well, at first I thought he'd made him like a little dinky little lightsaber, like his own one to give to him. And then he says, no, this belonged to Master Yoda. And I was racking my brain as to when the last time you see Yoda's lightsaber. And it's actually in his fight against Palpatine in episode 3. It's knocked out of his hand, and you see it fall down. There's a lot of falling lightsaber reaction shots in the prequel films. Every time they're in a fight, you always get a reaction shot of the saber. And we see it fall somewhere on the floor of the Senate. That's it. That's the last time we see it. And, a good question for another time maybe, but how does Luke have that lightsaber? I'm still waiting for an answer to find out how Anakin's magically showed up in episode 7. I don't even know if a comic or a book's come out to explain that just yet, but it's strange. I hope we get an explanation because things just tend to show up in Disney Star Wars and I have a problem with it. I'm like, no, please explain to me how you got this. And the little Lord of the Rings moment with Mithril, as light as a feather and as hard as dragon scales, this little Mithril vest that Mando's made for him. What do you I think he's going to choose the vest. I think he has to at this point. And it's quite convenient as well that Mando's new ship has the very convenient little pod in the back that is probably going to have a Baby Yoda. And I think I was probably saying this last week that I don't think you can do a Mando season 3 without that Grogu dynamic in there. I think that is the seller. That is kind of one of the big things that keeps people tuning in, that people love. It's a great merchandise having Baby Yoda. And I think having a Baby Yoda-less Mando season 3 would kind of be financial and probably critical suicide. If you do something interesting with Mando's character, I don't think I'd have a problem with it, but I'm surprised that we're seeing the training right now and that there's a choice presented to Grogu to potentially leave. It seems like it's all happening very quick, and I thought all of this would be kind of happening off screen during Mando season 3. Presented with this, I think we're going to get him back very soon. I think that that team dynamic with those two together, that duo is going to be pretty much set in stone from season 3 onwards, I think.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way, shape, or form that he doesn't choose that Beskar chainmail at all. I just can't see it being that way. I think Luke will almost have a failure with his first student that he's taken on, and that he's going to just, I don't know how he'll get off planet. That's the only thing, whether Luke then takes him in his X-Wing and drops him off on Tatooine, but surely Luke return to Tatooine is quite a big thing, so I don't know whether they'll get that. But I do think that Grogu will turn down the lightsaber at that point, and he will then become the traveling companion of the Mandalorian rather than staying and keeping on with his Jedi training, which I think will be handy because it means while he has some Force powers, he hasn't fully realized his Jedi powers, so he might be able to lift things and help out, but he's never going to be like this overly powerful Force creature who can just solve any issue for the Mandalorian while we're going through the series. So yeah, I don't think there's any doubt that you're right. That bubble in the back of the Naboo starfighter might as well have an ear shape on each side for him to sit to the side. It's literally been made for him. Like it's there's just no way it's not going to be that choice.
Yeah, Luke has mentioned it there as well. Yeah, I think it's a foregone conclusion at this point as well. I'm guessing this is referring to the lightsaber, maybe. Carl says this was different from the comics. It was found by the Empire and destroyed as a sign of victory against the Jedi. See, that's kind of cool. I like that. I think that's yeah. And then I was thinking,
I know I had a comic about finding Luke's on the floor on one of the lower floors of Bespin, like that was just found.
Don't you see it falling into the clouds in Empire? You know, when he like falls through that hatch,
some stuff falls out. I don't know if it's like, but yeah, I'm sure in the comics it's found by somebody, right? And taken. Yeah, so I know that's happened in the comics, but yeah, I didn't know about that Yoda one's really cool. That was destroyed, but yeah, not anymore. Luke found that. Somewhere.
Yeah, I bet Maz Kanata somehow found Yoda's lightsaber, gave it to Luke. Yeah, she's just got a whole collection. I think she's probably got them all. She's
been much funnier in episode 7 had she given Yoda's lightsaber to Finn, and just he was running around with a tiny little lightsaber throughout that rather than Luke's.
Did she get Vader's burnt helmet to Kylo as well? Did she go down to Endor and just
she got everything? She's got a little Forbidden Planet shop that she just has all this merchandise at.
It's how she raised the money to open her own cantina bar. She had to flog some wares on the side. I just have like this image of, Luke having a moment, staring at the funeral pyre of Vader, after it's all said and done, and then Maz just showing up like, excuse me, sorry, I'm just going to take that and just runs off with it. Explain, Disney. How do people find these things?
$400 for this.
Oh god, I think is that all of our Grogu stuff? So it ends on a will he, won't he? And
that's literally it's the last. I mean, it's the last shot of the episode, but kind of not where we're finishing. But yeah, that's his choice is where we left it. But yeah, so then we get the stranger coming out of the desert, I think.
Yes, I mean, there's also stuff happening on Tatooine and possibly stuff with Boba Fett as well. We don't even need to talk about the exposition scene where they're planning something and just whatever. We need
people. We need more people to get. We need more people to get killed, so the main characters don't have to die in the next episode in the war. Yeah.
So let's talk about the bomb scene then, because as I mentioned, I really like the Twi'lek woman. I don't know her name. That shows how good the characterization was. Just Twi'lek lady. She was kind of interesting, kind of cool, blown up. And I think one of the biggest sort of like crisis we had was like, oh my God, was Max Rebo there? Did he get blown up a second time? Explain how the blue elephant lugging a keyboard like managed to get off the sail barge. Did he land? Did he like jump off with his keyboard and land on the keyboard to cushion the blow? Like, and then how did he make his way back to? I get the impression they were in the middle of nowhere in that desert, and Max is all alone in the desert. That's a spin-off series right there. I want to see that. I want to see how he got back. Let's have like 5 years of flashbacks of him like hooking up with the Sand People and spending some time with them. And so I hope he wasn't there. I don't think you see him. But yeah, it's kind of like George mentioned earlier, he messaged me and said that he feels like he's seen this scene happen in a lot of films where some people will get up to leave and it'll be like, hey, you forgot your thing, and then boom, it's a bomb. So we have that moment, but I think the big talking point is sort of like towards the end of this episode, right? And a returning character We were kind of debating as to who it was going to be. We knew there was going to be sort of like a big villain behind everything, and we did guess, I think, a couple of episodes ago that it's probably going to be Cad Bane. It makes sense. He's kind of on the same wavelength as Boba Fett, the same kind of skill set, and he's also a bounty hunter. It was great seeing him in live action. I'll say that. Cad Bane's probably one of my favorite, probably in my top 3 in terms of the animated shows, as one of my favorite characters. He's just cool, and it's a real Western vibe to him, like unashamedly. You could say that maybe it's kind of subtle, perhaps, in like the original Star Wars. This guy's like straight out of like a Clint Eastwood movie something. The look of him and everything, and I always wondered, like, would this translate well? Ahsoka, when they moved her to live action, and I'll let you be the decider of that, whether you think that was a good translation from animated into live action. But they nailed Cad Bane. I'm pretty sure it was all CGI on the face. I don't know if it was prosthetics enhanced. I think it all looks CGI, but hearing that voice again, and it's just what a way to set him up as well. But again, it is that pitfall. If you haven't seen Clone Wars and you don't know who the hell Cad Bane is, that moment probably won't have as much of an impact for you, seeing that silhouette stood right there. But nonetheless, if you are a new fan to it, you are coming to this and you're witnessing this character for the first time, it's a really cool character introduction. I will say that, just killing the new guy, which he was for the chop instantly. Like he's just gone, he's expendable. Cobb Vanth's clearly going to survive. I guess the blaster bolt missed all of his vital organs, and he's going to be absolutely fine. No one's ever really gone in Star Wars anymore. But I enjoyed it. I thought it was great seeing him, and it stands to reason with Dave Filoni being the one who wrote this, alongside. Did he exclusively write it, or did he write it with...
I think it's with Jon Favreau, I think, in the credits. Written
I think he directed it, didn't he? I think Filoni directed it. But yeah, we finally got Cad Bane. I'm loving life. He's in the live action now. He's here to stay.
It was that first shot when he's seen in the far off distance in the haze of the heat, and you just kind of think it looks like it could be, and then it flashes again. He's even closer, and you can actually see the tubes on the side of him. You're like, oh, that's Cad Bane. And I think it's kind of weird. He's kind of introduced, if you didn't know the Star Wars Clone Wars, you haven't watched any of the Bad Batching like that where he shows up, you get a bit of a Boba Fett sort of interaction. This new guy who shows up, doesn't say a lot, and still comes off like a real badass villain. The look of him, I don't know if, again, like I'm going to go back, I don't know if it's CG or not. That's where they've gotten to a level where I can't tell sometimes now, where I look and go, I like how he kept his hat down so you couldn't see the red eyes at first, and that was hidden from just had the mouth of the pointy teeth. And you're right, the voice is great, 'cause it's almost certainly the same voice as the guy who's voiced him in Clone Wars and Bad Batch as well. And it was lovely to see him. I loved the whole Mexican standoff for the two. I love that it was telegraphed at the start when Cobb Vanth did the blasting all the Pikes, for them to be stood like that. And it was like almost like zooming in on the eyes, and then the new deputy sheriff messing stuff up by also getting a bit trigger happy. I just thought it was such a pure, picked out of any old Western movie and put into Star Wars right on Front Street. Like, you're giving you this exact scene you've seen a million times, but now it's Cad Bane doing it. And what an introduction. I don't know where he is in the Syndicate or how high up he is in the Syndicate with the Pikes, whether he's been hired by the Pikes just to kind of be hired hand. Who knows? But I'm here for it. I can't wait to see him back in the next episode.
Yeah, and again, it's going back to what. Yeah, it's going back to what you said. There is so much that the final episode needs to juggle. We've set up Cad Bane now. Granted, he does have a history in the Clone Wars, so maybe they'll skip like a big portion of the character development and everything, and just have him there because people are meant to know who he is. But you've kind of got to set him up as your main threat. As you said, there hasn't really been much of a significant threat really from that side of things. So we need to see that dialed up. Christ almighty, we need to see more of Boba Fett. Can't believe I'm saying that, but we need to see more of him. There's the Rancor and his whole ensemble of everyone, and Mando, and are they going to tie up like an ending for Mando leading into season 3, which of course will be the next time that we see these characters. There's so much. There is so much, and if I check the runtime next week and it's like 35 minutes, even at 40, 45, I don't feel like it's what you said. Like we need like 3 hours or something to tie this whole thing up at the end. But now that we have introduced Cad Bane, I think it's probably fair to say that we're going to get a season 2 of Book of Boba Fett. I think we're probably naive to think that we're just going to get a one and done series in a world of Disney Star Wars. You know, they've brought Boba Fett back for a reason. They've now brought Cad Bane into it. They're not just going to stop that storyline dead. You know, they want properties that they can continue. They want content on Disney Plus. I think it's fair to say that we're going to get Book of Boba Fett season 2, and hopefully they can learn from some of the mistakes and shortcomings with this series. I will be a little bit disappointed though if the Hutts don't make a comeback. I think that was, you know, a red herring maybe for the story, that we think that they're behind everything, and even they get scared and back out, going like, this is bigger than even us, and we're not going to get involved with this, knowing that Cad Bane's out there and is this terrifying individual. But I don't know. It was great seeing those, you know, like the Hutt clan and more of that, you know, the family and everything trying to vie for control. And I think it'd be a bit of a shame if we don't bring those back into the fold. But again, that would be bringing even more stuff into it, you know, packing even more story and characters. And I don't know. So what are your hopes for episode 7, other than the fact that it needs to be good, and we hope it's good? But
it needs a big payoff.
Yeah.
Yeah, just needs a big payoff of the kind of what we've now invested ourselves over these 6 episodes. It will be 7. And you're right, there is a lot of story to pack in. So while I'd love to see the Hutts show up in the final battle again in this war that's going to take place that we haven't really seen enough of to kind of warrant the big battle, you're right, it's too much. I don't think they might still be on Tatooine. You might see them, but I don't think you'll see anything from them. They don't do enough. I want to see the Rancor's there. We've been sold the Rancor. That Rancor's not been brought in for no reason. Boba Fett will ride that Rancor in Series 7. I will put money down right now that we get that at some point as a high point of the series, that he comes in on his Rancor. There's then the Mando stories. He's just going to be there and fire off some shots. Will Fennec make it out? Obviously we're not. There's characters we could lose. Fennec could probably go. If Cobb Vanth is fine and he comes in to help with the battle at the end because he's been shot and he's now mad, you could lose him. So there are characters you could lose. All of the mods, they could just mod off.
Please, please, for the love of God, that's my prediction.
They all got to get in the scooters, and they've all been rigged with those bombs. Each scooter, as they start them up, just as a massive firework explosion. It would be amazing. So yeah, there's just a lot to pack in what is going to be an action-oriented episode. I don't think we're going to get much kind of plot or talking or story. I think they've got to kind of go, this is what we're doing. We need to get the Pikes off Tatooine, where you want to be in charge, all our battle to get rid of them, see what happens. And then I think we'll be left probably with Boba Fett on that throne at the end of the show again, to then say end of Boba Fett will return or whatever they're going to finish it off with. But I think we'll get very much the similar to how we got the introduction to the Book of Boba Fett, where he went into Jabba's palace and sat on the throne. I think we'll end up very much with a similar shot as maybe the last thing. Or because this is the Book of Boba Fett, we will see the Mandalorian and what happens with his story towards the end, and Boba Fett will just be like, we're finished, bye, and then we'll have 20 minutes of Mandalorian.
Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me at this point. And then like the Mandalorian theme is going to play in full statement over the credits or something. Yeah, you mentioned about riding the Rancor. That has been set up, and if that doesn't get a payoff, that will be very strange. Star Wars, recent Star Wars films, certainly Episode 9 does have a lot of setups with no payoffs. Rey, I never told you. And so that could have been set up for nothing. We might not get a payoff to it. I'm wondering if at some point he is going to ride a Mythosaur, because is he destined? The legend has it that he is going to ride the legendary Mythosaur. That'd be a cool final shot, a final statement. But I'll settle for a Rancor. I will absolutely settle for a Rancor.
Or maybe at the end, Palpatine comes back somehow. And
that soon. Wow. Okay. Oh Christ! I mean, anything's possible at this point. If they can throw characters called the mods in there, why not? Why not at this point? Let's see. I love this comment right here. Lucas says, yeah, the next episode needs to be 1 hour minimum, and even that isn't enough. And yeah, they'll do Boba Fett season 2, but the first 3 episodes will all be about Kenobi or something.
Yes, it will.
prediction here from Carl. I think Cad Bane has been hired by Crimson Dawn that was set up at the end of Solo. I do think that, I mean, I wasn't a massive fan of Solo at all, but I do think that that is like an unfortunate kind of cliffhanger they left for themselves that hasn't had any kind of tie-up. You know, we know Maul's fate, and, you know, we've seen Maul die, but there is still some story to tell there that I don't know where they're going to plug that hole. You know, and I think they do in some kind of live action thing.
Oh, they will.
I mean, it's you know, it's there's always a bigger fish, right? But how many bigger fishes are we going to be keep given? You know, it's the Hutts. Oh no, it isn't. It's the Pikes. Oh no, it's not the Pikes. It's Cad Bane. Oh no, it's not. It's so I don't know if that'll get a bit frustrating as it goes on. I think now we've set up Cad Bane. Stick with him for now. Stick with him as the main thing. We've had a request here as well. I guess, you know, we can sort of like move over to the socials now as well. I think we'll probably
stuff here.
Yeah. Can you upload a Star Wars collection video? Have you uploaded a Star Wars collection video already?
I haven't actually. No, I've done a very brief sort of. This is my room that I work in, but I've never actually gone through all of the collection of stuff that I have. So an excellent idea. I think I'd. Why not get some views that way? At least one view. So that's good. If I put that video up, I know I get one view. So that's good. That's always good.
Well, we do have links to your socials in the description down below. I was going to see if we do have the little tabs going across. We don't have the little tabs going across, but guys, check the description after this video and go and give Dave a subscribe. So I guess final thoughts on the episode then. We've kind of teed up what we think, but this episode, how would you rate it sort of overall?
It's hard to say. I did love the episode. I loved what I saw. I loved the beats that we got of story. For me, it just wasn't a Book of Boba Fett story. This is a Mandalorian story, and yes, we're in a book, and maybe that we do get chapters, and you're not going to follow one character, right? If it's a book, you're reading a book, you're going to get more characters and chapters about their lives. And on television, I don't think that works quite the same way. We left the story for too much. We've had like 2 3/4 episodes now of Mandalorian, with Boba Fett kind of sandwiched in this with a little few glimpses. And while I put that down as a negative, I still loved every second of it. It made me smile. It made me happy. I was joyous at seeing some of the stuff that I saw, like seeing Cad Bane being back with Luke and Grogu, and R2 was there again, and just seeing Cobb Vanth being impressed that he had a Naboo starfighter was at the beginning. It was like, oh, that's just lovely moments. There just needs to be a bit more build around the Boba Fett story and why it's so important for them to get rid of the Pikes. It just hasn't been sold to me enough, but I can't say I'm negative about the series. I'm so happy with what I've seen. I love this episode.
Yeah, for me, it's just frustrating storytelling. You know, if you were going to do this show and it's like, right, we need to pick up Mando, you have like a brief little 5-minute thing where he's getting a new ship fixed up, and then Fennec walks in and goes, "Hey Mando, like, we need you for a job." He's like, "Okay." Then boom, he's taken to Boba. You get the mission briefing and you go out and do the thing. You see Mando do a cool bit of action. That's what you do. You don't deviate and do 2 complete episodes on Mando. But that being said, I love Mandalorian. I love the character setup from the Mandalorian and the lore and all the questions that we have. We've got so many questions after today's episode, and that's what it should all be about. And it would have been nice to have some kind of questions like that to go along with the Boba Fett content, but unfortunately we don't. I think maybe once all this said and done, someone could do like a really good edit of this thing where you take all the Boba things and you maybe restructure it and you truncate it a little bit more, and you have like an 1.5 to 2 hour Boba Fett story. And I think that could potentially work. I feel like
it could have been like the minute. Like, sorry, Chris. It does feel like it could have been 4 or 5 episodes now at the minute, and not the mini series. Like, and even like it is, like you just say, like a really a mini series. Not even putting it out to 7 episodes feels like it's a stretch for the story they had to tell for the Boba Fett side. So yeah, I think you're absolutely perfectly right. It's just not enough content, and it is frustrating.
Yeah, and I don't know. I'm kind of like, I hate doing this as well, like rewriting the whole show now. But there is so much you could have done with the Boba Fett character. I loved seeing the glimpses to Kamino. We could have had flashbacks on Kamino. De-aged Tamara Morrison. You could have had some Django scenes in there thrown in. I don't know. it feels like there's been so much potential, and the whole flashbacks, which I actually quite liked the flashback segment in the first few episodes. It felt like they just rushed through that, like there was more story to tell and there was room to let it breathe, and more story of what Boba got up to in those 5 years. And it's, we need to fast forward to Mando. So, but this episode exclusively, I loved it. Loved seeing Luke. I'm not even going to be ashamed to admit it. I was welling up a little bit when Baby Yoda was doing his training. It's, the Star Wars feels, and that's what it should all be about. And whenever I have rare moments like that with sort of Disney Star Wars recently, I take them for all I can, and I enjoy the moment. And I enjoyed the moment. I enjoyed the whole episode. But it is just frustrating from like a show standpoint when it's a show about Boba Fett. So hopefully we get some more Boba Fett next episode. We don't have a title, but we do know that Rodriguez, probably unsurprisingly, is directing the final episode. So you're going to get a lot of action. And if it's anything like his action scene in season 2 of Mando, hopefully we should go out on a bang. And I hope we do. I hope it does kind of find its footing towards the end. But I guess that'll do it for our review on Chapter 6, From the Desert Comes a Stranger. Again, you guys have been great on the comments tonight, but if you are discovering this video after the fact, do let us know your thoughts on the Book of Boba Fett, what you think of it so far, your hopes, speculations for the final episode, and yeah, just everything in between. We've got a lot of juicy stuff today, potential leading into Mandalorian Season 3, and we want to hear from you guys as well. In terms of our socials, we've got a lot of stuff coming out this week. So right there, going across the bottom of the screen, you can find our stuff on Cinema Savvy. That's Twitter at cinema_savvy and Facebook and letterboxd.com/cinema savvy. And because we don't have the little scrolly bars, we do have your links in the description down below. But Dave, if you want to tell people a little bit about your channel and where people can find you.
So yeah, you can come over to The Life of Brian, spelled as my surname. I think it's in the comments, and the links will be below. But yeah, come over. I am a potwork model builder and collector of general tat that you'll see standing around me that my wife hates me for buying. But yeah, so I'm building the Ecto 1 at the moment, part work on that. I've just finished that Terminator that sort of lit up just behind me there. So that's just finished. And I'm only like 17 subscribers away from hitting 1,500. So that would be lovely if anyone did see this and want to come over and just click that button as well.
Awesome. And head over there, and the people want a collection video. Maybe you'll get on that at some point, but that'll be really cool to see. I do find it fascinating looking in the background to see what I can pick out myself, actually. It's a wonderful collection, and you guys, I mean, you can see a glimpse of the Terminator right there. It's quite spectacular, I must admit. There's a lot of stuff coming to the channel this week, and obviously next week, if you are just in it for our Star Wars content, next week it's going to be the Book of Boba Fett finale. Obviously, spoiler discussion, that's going to be live on Wednesday, 9th of Feb. Probably going to go live on that one at the usual time of 10 p.m. on that one. Slightly later tonight because of schedules, but next week we should be 10 p.m. Dave, you better be coming back for it, because this has been a blast tonight, and we need you on the finale. We need you now for the finale.
Don't have to ask me. I'm just a media whore. I'll be back.
And content for the rest of the week, if you can't wait until then, if you want to see more of us, and hopefully you do. George will be on a review tomorrow. He's managed to get in for an early screener of Jackass Forever. I'm very, very jealous. So that's coming tomorrow, Thursday, the 3rd of February. I'll be seeing that over the weekend. It's probably one of my most anticipated films of the year, in all honesty. It'll be a good laugh, and I think we all probably need one as well. And also, but there's a new Batman film coming out soon. I must have got about 6 car adverts tied to Batman today in the film that I went to see at the cinema. And Batman's coming, and hopefully it's going to be good, but there is going to be Batman content every Friday starting this week. I think this is a video idea that George is doing for this week, but we will have tier lists, we'll have discussion videos probably on Batman. Love me some Batman. George is going to be doing a video this week on Friday of the 10 films to see before the Batman. Now, this isn't just going to be 10 Batman films to watch before the new Batman film. It'll be films related to either the director, certain actors within the film, to sort of gauge a sense of their body of work before the Batman. So that's going to be an interesting video. I think it's going to be a shorter video, maybe like 5 to 10 minutes. So do check that out on Friday. I think that's all the formalities done. So once again, thank you to everyone that's tuned in tonight. We love doing this. We love chatting Star Wars and everyone coming on board. We hope to see you all next week for the finale. And yeah, till the next video, we'll see you guys next time. Take care, everyone.